Hello and welcome to Meet the Leaders. I'm Alfred Bundy. To call this week's guest outspoken, maybe a bit over the top, but he certainly has his opinions about what's going on at the federal, state, and local level. His work with the U.S. Conference of Mayors has led to national recognition, and it was even rumored that he was running for governor. But through it all, it is the residents of his city, Elizabeth, that he serves with a passion. Please welcome the mayor of the great city of Elizabeth, Chris Bollwage. Welcome back again to Meet the Leaders.
Al, it's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Certainly we have to start with an area that has all levels of government, federal, state, and local people concerned about, and that's jobs. What can we do? What's some ways that we could stimulate growth for jobs?
There's a lot of ways to do that. One is the urban enterprise zone, which the governor eliminated in this year's budget, was a factor in the ability for urban communities throughout New Jersey to create jobs. There could have been a better way to do the urban enterprise zone. There still is, if the legislature and the governor can agree, and that is tying the dollars in urban enterprise zones to job creations. The president's stimulus package that was beaten up by the Republicans nationally helped us create jobs through some infrastructure projects, such as some sewer jobs, some paving jobs. Now, these jobs oftentimes go unnoticed, but they put people to work. Creating recreational opportunities also stimulates jobs. In the city of Elizabeth, we were named in the top 50 cities a couple of years ago by Popular Science magazine as one of the top 50th greenest cities. Green jobs, creating the opportunities to make your city cleaner and more environmentally sound, are a way to create jobs. And as well as summer and recreation jobs. I'm getting ready to work on a jobs package in the city of Elizabeth that we're going to work on and announce it in January, on a way to bring people to work, even if it's temporary. If you've been unemployed for a long period of time, we're going to figure out a way to help get you some pay for cleaning up our city.
Mayor, let's go back for just a second. You mentioned the urban enterprise zone. Share with us in the past what Elizabeth used that money for, but also tell us what happened there with the governor's change.
The urban enterprise zone is about $90 million a year to cover all of the zones throughout the state. That's the sales tax that goes and pays by the consumer at 3.5%, goes to the state, and the state then turns it back over to those urban enterprise zones, whether it be for facade grants or job creation, whether it be for economic development opportunities or low-interest loans, walking police or extra police in the neighborhood business districts. So there's a whole host of areas that can be done with. Urban Enterprise Zone was a job creator. Urban Enterprise Zones helped create jobs in urban communities. That was the focus.
And also kept sales tax lower.
Well, that hasn't changed. That's remained the same in the Urban Enterprise Zones. So a lot of the people don't see any changes in the Urban Enterprise Zones, with the exception of the job creation part, which is what the governor took out of the budget. This was envisioned by the Kane administration and then Secretary Jack Kemp in the Reagan administration. It's a concept that brings jobs to urban communities. And in last year's budget, all of that effort has been taken out.
Some estimate of what job loss there's been, or what really happened?
The problem is there's no money to study the impact of urban enterprise zones on job creation. The governor hired a consultant for $150,000 to do a study, which basically became a hatchet job on destroying urban enterprise zones and saying that urban enterprise zones do not function in their community. But the problem with those consultants is they were paid by the governor, and they gave the governor a report on what he wanted. That's the bottom line.
You think it was a kind of a political move, this consultancy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, the governor has a problem with the state budget, so let's balance it on the backs of urban communities. The urban communities did not support the governor in a big way, so therefore, why not take money out of those communities? It's a lot easier than taking it out of other communities.
Let's talk a little bit about the president. Is there other things you'd like to see President Obama really doing to stimulate jobs in the urban centers?
I think this is the first time in the last 4 years where he's put forth this bill on jobs for America, and he's going around the country saying that the Republicans are holding this bill up in Congress. You can't pacify the Republican Party in this country. You can't work with the Republican Party in this country. The Republican Party of today is all about themselves. It's either their direction, their highway, or no highway. And clearly President Obama, for the first 2.5 years, tried to find common ground. That was not a winning strategy. If President Obama is to be reelected as President of the United States in 2012, he's going to have to draw the line in the sand somewhere. He's going to have to point out that he's about creating jobs, that he is fighting for the middle class. I mean, this Occupy Wall Street is a great thing. I think the president should wrap his arms around it. And I also believe that cops and firemen and teachers and ILA people and secretaries and clerks, people like us, we should be over there buying these folks lunch, because they're standing up for the 99% of this country. The wealth has been gathered through Republican policies the last 10 years into a small group of people.
Let's talk just a little bit more about Occupy Wall Street movement that really seems to be growing, especially what we saw in today's news. Share with us a little bit. Do you think this is the counter to the Tea Party?
You know, that's an interesting thought. I was on a conference call with mayors from around the country yesterday talking about the Occupy Wall Street movement. And mayors from around the country are trying to contain the movement, and how do police effectually control Occupy Wall Street? I think it should be the other way around. I think the police should be joining them. I think the PBA should be setting up barbecue tents and helping these folks. The message they're delivering is helping to protect the policemen and firemen's pension, is helping to protect the sales tax benefits that we have in urban areas. It's helping to protect the middle class wages. I mean, the Republican Party has been so great at beating up on unions and saying unions are the cause of our problems, when in effect it's been policies put forth on saving the wealthiest taxes. It's protecting the wealthiest from being taxed any more money.
Are you suggesting that Wall Street has a lot of Republican influence?
I don't know if Wall Street has a lot of Republican influence, except there's a lot, you know. It's like when Willie Sutton robbed banks in the 1930s. They said, Willie, why do you rob banks? He said, that's where the money is. You know, Wall Street is controlling the economy. It wasn't teachers and firemen and policemen who caused this economic recession. It was big banks and Wall Street and their policies that caused this recession. We've allowed the Republican Party to blame it on unions. The media has said, hey, this is because of over-generous pensions through the years. Do pensions need to be reined in? Does there need to be a checks and balances on things? Absolutely. But it's not the cause of the recession.
Let's discuss possibly a little bit the millionaire's tax. Give us both sides of the argument, the pro and the con.
Well, you know, Warren Buffett says that he's paying a higher rate. Warren Buffett says he's paying a lower rate than the secretary in his office. He paid $5.9 or $6.9 million in taxes last year. And he paid at a rate of 17% is what he released. And
Warren Buffett, let's make it clear, is one of the richest men in America.
I think he's the third or fourth richest guy in America, maybe even the world. But he paid 17% in taxes. You know, I pay 30% or 32% or whatever the spectrum is. I don't even know, but it's that rate. So I'm paying more of a percentage than Warren Buffett. And you know, the con side is the Republicans have said for years that you can't tax the wealthy because they're the ones that create jobs. Well, look how well that's doing. You know, over the last 8 years, how many jobs have the Republicans created? How many jobs, you know, they're sitting on money. Corporations throughout this country are sitting on hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And we have to listen to this rhetoric that if we tax them more money, we're going to drive away jobs. Well, they're not doing it now. So if we tax them more money and we put it in a specific fund to create jobs, that money will create jobs, period. It should do nothing else with it.
Now, a few months back, you were featured on an ABC News piece talking about how to redirect war spending to help rebuild America's infrastructure. Tell us a little bit about this bridge to nowhere in Elizabeth.
Well, on Front Street, and this happens to be Estuary Day in our city, so before I came here, I visited with about 300 students who were learning about the estuary, and this bridge is deemed by the Coast Guard that has to be a navigable waterway into the Elizabeth River, into the Arthur Kill, which connects the estuary with the commerce of Port Elizabeth.
You might want to tell us what the estuary is.
The estuary is where the salt water meets the fresh water, and we have one of the top 5 estuaries in the country that has been targeted for rehabilitation by the Army Corps of Engineers. Now, this bridge is a bridge that can be raised and needs to maintain a navigable waterway. And right now, if you go, it's sticking straight up in the air in order to maintain the navigable waterway in the Elizabeth River. Because the bridge can no longer handle traffic or trucks going over it, it's been deemed unsafe. It has to stay straight up in the air, which means we have no commerce, no trucks going through there. We're able to spend a lot of money in Kandahar and Baghdad rebuilding the infrastructure of those communities during the war and after the war and even ongoing. It's about time that we recognize the transportation needs of this country and put money into the economic needs of rebuilding our infrastructure. And it'll do a couple of things. Not only will it help the infrastructure going forward for the next 100 years, it will also help create jobs for the community in which we need desperately.
Tell us now, is the water there environmentally sound? Has that been already tested by the Marine Corps engineers and all?
Well, it's the Elizabeth River into the Arthur Kill. I mean, there's warnings about fishing and things. I wouldn't recommend eating the seafood or eating the shellfish, and it's a major commerce area for vessels. But 60, 70 years ago, you used to swim in that water.
Okay. I already can hear that you're vocal as far as your support for President Obama, and also I can hear your displeasure for the attacks by the Republican Party. But let's talk a little bit about what this presidential season looks like. Is it going to be President Obama against Mitt Romney at this point? What do you say?
Well, that's what the pundits say. The pundits say that Mitt Romney all but has the nomination sewn up. I'm not so sure. There's some crazy people in the Republican Party. I mean, just look at, the way they act and the way they behave. I mean, they cheered when Rick Perry talked about executing 265 people. They cheered and they booed a Marine who was gay, but he's serving our country. I just went to a funeral the other day of a young man who served in the Marine Corps in the city of Elizabeth, was discharged, and was struck down by a disease early in his life. He served the country. I mean, do these people need to be booed because they were called by our country to serve regardless of their sexual orientation? There's something wrong in a political party that stands up and treats people because of their sexual orientation in a negative way when they're willing to risk their lives for the rest of us.
Now, Chris Christie just endorsed Mitt Romney. How important is that?
Well, there's no other choice for Governor Christie. I mean, he can't endorse Michelle Bachmann. I mean, she's off the reservation. And, Rick Perry is basically out there where the buses don't run. So there's only one person who endorsed in this race, and Chris Christie picked the person that, Mitt Romney is a very intelligent, smart person. He's just flip-flopped on the issues. It depends on where Mitt Romney's standing and who he's talking to on what his position's going to be.
I see. Now, how do you see Governor Christie's treatment of the urban centers? Where has he failed?
Well, there is no plan for the urban centers. I mean, the governor talks about his childhood and how he grew up in the city of Newark and how he's committed to urban redevelopment. But there's no plan. There's no economic development plan for the urban communities. There's no plan to discuss instituting more tax credits. The urban enterprise zone went away. There's no economic forums. There's no debate in our state about job creation. There's no debate in our state about job creation in urban communities or suburban communities. The debate in our state over the last year has been whether Chris Christie is going to run for the President of the United States. And now the debate is whether he's going to be the Vice President of the United States. So clearly, there needs to be a refocusing of the media in this state as well as the legislature on a job creation package. There need to be forums throughout the 21 counties on how can the state legislature and the governor help your county create jobs or your urban center, whether it be Newark or Elizabeth or Jersey City. How can we do this? What policies from the state can we enact? We need to get off of this who's running for president and who's not running for president when you have a 9.4% unemployment rate.
And in the cities, much higher.
The city of Elizabeth, I believe, is somewhere between 11 and 12%. I haven't checked it lately.
When 15 goes to 16% in Newark. Right. We need to take a break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with the mayor of Elizabeth, Chris Bollwage.